illegal to do this, and it was used against her to gain that conviction. What else do you have up here from chapter 2? Well, we covered a lot of stuff. Equal Rights Amendment. What was the Equal Rights Amendment? What's the one key word from the Equal Rights Amendment? Sex. Can't discriminate on account of sex. Did the Equal Rights Amendment ever get passed?
No.
No. If you remember, it was designed to deal with gender pay inequities. What could it also have been used had it been passed to defend? Gay marriage. That was the other piece with this. And I've given you that as an example of original intent. Under original intent, you need to go and look at what the people that wrote the laws meant, rather than just looking at what the law says. They did not intend for gay marriage to be protected. They meant to protect pay equity, but original intent can be overlooked sometimes based on the meaning of the words. Do you remember the other example of original intent I'd given you dealt with religion? Dealt with marriage and religion? Dealt with multiple marriages and religion? Polygamy! Polygamy is not legal under original intent. Do you remember why? Because they didn't intend to protect that faith, because it wasn't here. If you remember, that's the reason that they struck down polygamy. Go ahead.
You said the Equal Amendment.
Equal Rights Amendment
didn't pass?
No, it's not part of the Constitution. Yes, it is not part of the Constitution. A lot of issues might be a little easier to deal with right now had it been that way. Let me jump to the articles fairly quick, and I'll come back to these terms in just a second. ERA, I know we've dealt with that. Do you remember the FBI one, dealing with the drugs?
Was it, you have a limit of 15 times smoking weed?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
then 2
yeah.
years.
You could.
Is it 3 years clean? Or 2 years?
They
I thought it was
they
like
took out
5
the,
years clean.
Sounds like y'all need to look over the drug FBI one. Please take a look at this. The 10 o'clocks had it, the 11 o'clocks had it. My 9 o'clock people, did we do that? I don't think we did. So 9 o'clocks, you're not going to be responsible for FBI.
We did that. Wait, the one with
Hey, don't ruin it for your own.
No, go ahead, Argentinian, speak. I like it when the Argentinian
Is it
speak.
the one with the marijuana that they can't have if they use it more than 50 times?
Yeah, we did. Okay, everybody's got it. Thank you. Thank Thomas for this. The FBI one was basically talking about the test that they had. And basically you could not have used weed more than 15 times or within how many years?
5.
3, 5, 7.
I've heard 2, 3, 5. Look that up and make sure you're clear on that. If it was coke, it was no more than 5 times and not within the past 10 years. And this was one of those rare examples where freedom will drop and order drops at the same time, because by them restricting your weed use, you're also restricting the numbers of people that could actually join the FBI. Freedom and order are both dropping because you're losing personal freedom and you're losing law enforcement to be able to enforce it. The other thing that they said in that article was you can never have sold it. So it doesn't matter how many times you used it or when. If you've ever sold it in a position of responsibility, you're out and they can prosecute you if they find this. We had talked about taxes. There are very few times where I mention numbers, but in how your taxes will be spent in this little piggy, it breaks down, if you remember. How much does the government say that it spends on you?
About $24,000.
Yeah, a little bit less than $24,000. How much does it collect in taxes?
About 21,000.
A little bit more than 20,000. It's like 20,044, something like that. Bottom line on this, it mentions Medicare and Social Security. It mentions defense. It mentions low-income programs. It mentions interest. These kinds of things. And education was number 6, yes. Make sure if you're going to deal with that one, you got some good specific numbers. And then the pork barrel one, this little piggy, dealt with a lot of different projects that the government was spending money on. Make sure that you know projects and dollar amounts for some of those as well. Yes?
You said they spend 20,000 on us.
They collect 20,000. It's straight from the article, and I think it's like 23,760 is what they say that they spend per household. Okay, land grab. What was the land grab? Dealing with Connecticut.
Building, removing the ghetto buildings and
The ghetto buildings.
It
Wow!
was gentrification, right?
What's that?
Gentrification, when they were trying to like.
I don't know if I've ever used the word gentrification, although that might actually be what it
Yeah,
is.
that's the word.
If you remember on this, they were basically talking about breaking down or destroying, forcing people. What was the term when you force somebody to sell your land?
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain. And when you use eminent domain, what is it typically that you use eminent domain for?
Build highways.
To build highways or hospitals, public kinds of projects. How do they want to use?
Dominic's not far.
What's that?
Dominic's not far.
Dominic's not for, oh God, you don't have to say that on camera. Okay, here's my other question for you. How did they want to use eminent domain in this article? What do they want to build,
To
Diana?
build a mall.
They wanted to build a mall so Giovanna could buy scarves and boots and all these other things. If you remember, they wanted to build high-rise condominiums. They wanted to build shopping malls. They wanted to build restaurants. Why did they want to do this? What did they argue was the public purpose?
To raise the economy.
Taxes. Property taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, and we're going to force people to sell. They can go somewhere else. They can be another county or another state's problem, but we are going to have this shopping, restaurant, residence hub that's going to generate all of this money. Is it legal to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. The Supreme Court agreed that it is legal to do this because ultimately you would be getting money for schools, money for police, money for fire, money for roads, and that's what politicians really need. Those people that were actually going to be evicted, they don't vote anyway. They don't understand this. So that's basically what we're saying there. What other questions, or any of the others up here? Not the president's call. Who has the ability to declare war?
The Congress.
Congress does. It seems like every exam, people say it's the president. That's the only piece from that article is Congress has the ability to declare war because they wanted to put that in the hands of 500 plus people instead of one person, the president. Strip search. What was strip searching?
It was like I got pulled over.
You
for
got pulled
some-
over, yeah.
for something minor. I really don't remember what it was.
Yeah, it was unpaid tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then he actually ended up going to jail, and
Yeah.
then when he got fingerprint and like the other stuff, he actually had to do a strip search.
Yeah,
And in the car, he was with his family,
yeah.
and then but that was like very invasive. So then he
Yeah.
took it to court, and the rule was pretty much that it was allowed, that it was.
You
legal to
are
do it.
allowed, in fact, and the idea is that in the interest of safety for the officers, in the interest of the safety for the inmates, you are required to strip search, or I'm not required, but you exercise the option of strip searching. In this instance, it was probably a jerk move by the police. He was driving, and they found these unpaid tickets. They took him into custody. They strip searched him. It wasn't anything violent, but believe it or not, it's legal to do this in the interest of safety and in the interest of order. Go ahead.
There's a good question. So then it's
Bless you.
up to the officers to whether or not strip search.
You don't have to do it, but if they option to do this, then yes.
So then how? I mean, I imagine women will be strip searched.
Women would be strip searched by other women officers. Men would be strip searched by other men officers. So they're not, mixing up the genders in that regard. But you're right. It seems like there could be some malfeasance there.
All right.
Malfeasance, yeah. Okay, webcams.
What is about the
ones in
yeah,
the car.
Yeah, the webcams in the cars. Go ahead.
So basically, they instituted like the driving program.
They, who?
I think government, I guess.
University of Maryland, College Park.
Yeah.
They set up these cameras on the dashboards of cars. And what were these cameras when would they activate? What would they see?
They would activate whenever like they got like enough G-force or like whatever to indicate that something had happened.
So if you accelerate too fast, if you swerve, if you hit the brakes too quick, the camera kicks on and it is going to catch what's going on in the car. And typically their thought is, and what cars do they want to put these in?
The students.
The younger kids, the 18 to 25 demographic, because they're the worst drivers. So the idea is, and if the camera comes on, then what happens? It films for what?
Like 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah, about 20 seconds, and
it gets sent to the parents.
it does. And the idea is that if you're drinking coffee, sending text messages, putting on makeup, eating a Big Mac, whatever the case is, and then you get involved in something like this, the camera is going to catch what's going on throughout the front seat if you're not wearing a seatbelt. So the parents are going to have the ability to address this. Now, excuse me, if you're having sex and you alter the G-forces, it's not, it may come on the camera. I mean, you might really have the pushing going, but it's not going to be sent back to your parents. They're looking at driving-related issues. So it's not going to embarrass you necessarily too terribly crazy in that regard. So that's basically what that is. Is it effective?
Yeah, it was really effective.
It's close to 90% at the end of the year. It's 90% less emails are going back to the parents. These younger kids are driving better. And the controversy is freedom versus order. Privacy, it's my car, it's my property. You shouldn't get the opportunity to watch me. But in fact, if you're driving appropriately, this camera could provide evidence that clears you, and it could lower your insurance, not necessarily to convict you and ultimately to raise it. These are basically the articles that are here. Let me run back to the chart real quick and just take a look. Virginia plan and New Jersey plan was big state versus small state. I think, Alvin, in your own way, you kind of started to say that a few minutes ago. I think we've covered just about everything else. Ratification was 9/13. As far as articles, Article 1, if you remember, was Congress. Article 2 was executive. Article 3 was courts. They put them in order of their significance. Article 1, 3 textbook pages. Article 2, about 1 textbook page. Article 3, about a half of a textbook page. Article 4 was full faith and credit. Article 5 was the amendments. Article 6 was the supremacy clause. And then Article 7 was ratification. I'm not going to ask you too much about those, but maybe make sure Article 1, 2, and 3 you're kind of good with. And otherwise, I think we've covered basically everything in 2. Any questions about 3?
Wait, about
Revolution.
Devolution, revolution. Anybody remember that? It dealt with Reagan? Go ahead, Lamont.
Well, basically, Reagan wanted to bring down the power of government because ever since FDR, government has been moving up
Yes.
and controlling more, and so Reagan wanted to dilute that and
Yes.
bring back power more towards the state.
He did. He wanted devolution, revolution, or devolve the power of the federal government and give it back to the states. He slowed the growth of government, but he never stopped it. Bill Clinton slowed the growth of government, but he never stopped it. George W. and President Obama have basically accelerated it to levels that we really haven't seen. Both a conservative and a liberal have done this. In the beginning, who had the power?
States.
States were much more powerful than the federal government in the beginning under the Articles and for about the first third of the country under the Constitution. Basically, from the end of the Civil War up until the election of FDR, there was a rough dual federalism balance. And in the last third of the country, it's gotten to the point where the federal government says jump, and the states are the ones that say how high. So you see where the need for devolution, revolution is. The 4 powers that are up here: commerce, tax and spend, full faith, and privileges and immunities. We've dealt with full faith, but commerce, tax and spend, and privileges and immunities, be good with the examples on those. And we just did these today. Commerce. When we talked about commerce, we talked about soap, we talked about prostitution, we talked about the Mann Act, we talked about the guns. These are all examples where commerce can basically fall in there. What are the 2 factors that you have to have for the commerce power? Go ahead, Taku.
You need to travel other states.
Okay, you need to cross state lines.
And you need to buy something.
You need to have the exchange of goods and services, and you've got to cross state lines. Commerce power is the biggest power that the federal government has, and as soon as you do those 2 things, the federal government can now exercise jurisdiction over you. Go ahead.
The Mann Act, you said that it wasn't like men that were kidnapping women.
Yes, the Mann Act. They were kidnapping the women, yes.
How was, could you explain again that story again?
Can anybody explain the Mann Act? Go ahead, Diana.
If they had immoral intentions.
If a man crossed state lines with immoral intentions with a woman, then in fact they would be subject to federal prosecution. How was it intended to deal with it, and how could it be dealt with or used today?
That now it's both women and men.
Now it is both women and men. What were they trying to stop with the Mann Act 100 years ago?
Premarital sex, right?
No, prostitution.
Prostitution, yeah. Prostitution. Basically, the idea is that men were kidnapping women and then basically pimping them or prostituting them, sometimes maybe 20 or 30 miles from their home. And if they created serious enough federal penalties, then in fact, guess what? This will stop. Did it ultimately stop? Well, it lessened. Today, if you cross state lines with immoral intentions, I think in your class it was Giovanna, right? Was she the one that would cross state lines?
Yeah,
No,
so,
Jennifer.
Jennifer.
no, to the beach.
That's right. Jennifer went to the beach and she blushed about it. Yeah, not to put you on blast, Jennifer, but the idea, if you remember with this, is if in fact you cross state lines and you're with a female and you're not married and you spend the night,